Good morning, everyone. I am hoping you all can see my screen with an agenda on it. Devon, is it showing?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. I see some folks are still being let in the room, but it looks like we're about ready to begin. So I'll just give it one more second as that attendee list continues to increase. All right. Well, good morning. My name is Christine Morris. I am the facilitator for the CFWI Management Oversight Committee and the Steering Committee and host of today's web-based Steering Committee meeting. This is our second virtual Steering Committee meeting, and I want to thank the South Florida Water Management District for their technical assistance in helping us bring us together today. We currently have over 71 participants attending today's meeting. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and broadcast via YouTube, courtesy of the South Florida Water Management District. Therefore, I will encourage everyone to keep their Zoom on mute while they are not speaking. The recording will be made available on cfwiwater.com in a few weeks after the meeting. To begin, I'll take roll call to make sure we have all our steering committee members on the line. We'll start with Adam Blaylock, Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
I'm here.
Thank you. Todd Swingle, Toho Water Authority.
I'm here.
Christopher Pettit, Florida Department of Agricultural and Consumer Services.
Good morning.
Morning. Susan Dolan, St. Johns River Water Management District.
Present.
Jim Murphy, Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Present.
Jennifer Smith, South Florida Water Management District.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. Today's agenda includes arguably the most important topic of the past 5 years. Claire Muirhead with the St. Johns River Water Management District will present to you the 2020 CFWI Regional Water Supply Plan for your endorsement and approval. This plan has been under development since the approval of the 2015 Regional Water Supply Plan, and dozens, or honestly likely over 100 individuals have dedicated countless hours to complete this 2020 plan. I'm confident many thanks will be given today, but I want to add my voice to the chorus and thank all those who participated in the development of the 2020 plan. We have included in today's agenda 2 public comment periods. The first will follow Ms. Muirhead's presentation prior to committee action on the plan. The second will follow all substantive agenda items for a general public comment. A little instruction on the public comment, which I will repeat when it's time. If you are participating via Zoom, you will use the raise hand feature. You may have to click on the participants button to see this feature. If you're participating via phone, *9 will raise your hand and *6 will mute and unmute your line when it's your time to speak. Commenters are going to be given 3 minutes to speak before we move to the next speaker. First action item on our agenda are 2 housekeeping items. The first is approval of team membership changes. Team membership is approved by the steering committee and is in need of updating. With your agenda, you receive the team membership list displayed here. This represents the most up-to-date list available. The Management Oversight Committee recommends approval of these amendments to team membership. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you to facilitate steering committee action on this item.
Thank you, Christine, and welcome steering committee.
Did we lose you, Adam? Uh-oh. Adam, you might want to try to maybe mute and unmute again. All right, sorry for the interruption, folks. Let's just give it a minute to see if we can get Adam back on the line.
He dropped off. He may be having some connectivity issues on his side.
Hopefully he'll join right back in. Hey, Adam, are you able to speak?
Yep, I'm back. I don't know. I guess internet went down at the office.
Okay.
But where did I leave off? Just, I don't know when I cut out or,
You were just saying thank you to the steering committee members.
oh, wow. All right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'll first ask if any of the steering committee members have any comments on the membership change. All right. And seeing no comments, ask for a motion to approve the amendments to the team membership as presented to the steering committee.
So moved.
Second.
Second. This is
by
Chris.
Dolan.
Either way.
Very good. Thank you. And we're going to do voice vote from all the members of the steering committee since we're doing it virtually. So I'm going to call each one individually. Todd Swingle.
Aye.
Chris Pettit.
Aye.
Susan Dolan.
Aye.
Jim Murphy.
Aye.
Jennifer Smith.
Aye.
And Adam Blaylock is aye.
Thank you, Adam. The next up on the agenda is the meeting minutes, to approve the meeting minutes from February 21st, 2020, as well as the May 29th, 2020 steering committee meetings. The February 21st, 2020 meeting minutes were not brought to the May meeting, and so both meeting minutes do need to be approved. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you to facilitate steering committee action.
Thank you. Again, I'll ask if there are any questions of the steering committee or comments. All right, and ask for a motion to approve the minutes for February 21st and May 29th, 2020 as submitted.
So moved.
And second.
Second. Dolan.
Thank you. And same, we'll do a voice vote. Todd,
Aye.
Chris,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Jim,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well.
Thank you, steering committee. Next up, we have Ms. Clara Muirhead to present the 2020 Regional Water Supply Plan. Ms. Muirhead, I am going to give you control of the screen. One moment.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christine. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the steering committee. I am Clara Muirhead, a member of the Regional Water Supply Plan team, and I am standing in for Tammy Bader-Gibbs today. Today, we will be presenting the details of the 2020 Central Florida Water Initiative Regional Water Supply Plan. At the conclusion of this presentation, I will be asking the steering committee for their consideration to vote to endorse and approve the draft plan and encourage the respective water management district governing boards to approve the 2020 Central Florida Water Initiative Regional Water Supply Plan at their November meetings. As a quick refresher, I would like to briefly go over the purpose of the Regional Water Supply Planning and what the Central Florida Water Initiative is. Regional water supply planning is required by Florida statute for those regions where existing sources of water are not adequate to meet existing and future reasonable beneficial uses and to sustain water resources and natural systems. Water supply plans look 20 years into the future and include population and water demand projections, an assessment of available water supplies to determine whether current and future demands can be met with fresh groundwater without harming Florida's natural systems, and if not, identification of management strategies, water conservation, and alternative water supply projects to meet future needs. Plans must also identify funding options and must be updated every 5 years. The Central Florida Water Initiative planning area includes Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Polk, and Southern Lake counties. The process is a dynamic and collaborative effort and includes the state's 3 largest water management districts, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, water utilities, the agriculture and business communities, environmental organizations, and other stakeholders. The goals of these efforts are to identify sustainable quantities of groundwater, develop strategies to meet these water demands, and complete the 2020 CFWI plan. The first Central Florida Water Initiative Plan was approved by the 3 district governing boards in November of 2015. The current draft is an update to this 2015 plan. As I noted, the first and current CFWI plan was approved in 2015. So we didn't start from scratch with this 2020 update, but built on the work that was done previously. This 2020 plan is the 5-year update and provides the framework for our water supply management decisions. The plan uses a planning period from 2015 to 2040. In addition to the executive summary, there are 9 chapters that provide summaries of our projections, analyses, project options, water sources and conclusions, and next steps. Since 2015, the districts, the Florida DEP, Florida Department of Ag, utilities, and other stakeholders have collaboratively implemented water supply initiatives to meet regional goals. These included major upgrades to the East Central Florida transient groundwater model, consisting of expansion of the model, more recent water use data, consensus-based hydrogeology, and inclusion of an independent peer review panel during model development. Several alternative water supply projects were completed, increasing the volume of reclaimed water used in the area and stormwater captured. From fiscal year 2015 through 2019, the districts provided approximately $45 million for 39 alternative water supply projects, making available 94 million gallons per day of AWS. I would also like to note that for fiscal year 2020, the districts have funded $16 million, making an additional 29 million gallons per day of AWS available. Through the Data Monitoring and Investigations team, Lower Florida and Aquifer investigations are ongoing, including 15 new additional wells, which will help us to better understand the hydrogeology of the area and help to identify potential new sources of AWS in the region. A water conservation implementation strategy was approved by the steering committee in October of 2019, and this strategy identifies progress achieved and future steps. And lastly, in terms of regional cooperation, this has continued and has expanded to efficiently and effectively meet the water needs of Central Florida. For example, the Polk Regional Water Cooperative was created in 2016 and includes Polk County and 15 municipal member governments. The Polk County Cooperative provides for regional cooperation in the development of AWS to meet future water demands within Polk County. Okay. I just see a blank screen right now, Christine. Do you see the table?
This is Chris. I'm just seeing a blank screen as well, if that helps.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know why those two are blank. Was this the next slide? Or no?
No, the next slide was the table with the water demands in the CFWI planning area.
Okay. Give me one moment. Let me pull up the original source file.
Okay.
Okay, I was able to find it. Let me share my
okay.
screen again. One moment.
Okay, great.
Let
Does
me give you
everybody
back.
else see that?
Yep, I can see it.
All
Okay,
right,
great.
Claire, you should have control.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so this table shows the projected increase in demand for the Central Florida Water Initiative planning area. Public supply remains the largest use category, followed by agriculture. Overall, water demands are projected to increase by 36%, or 240 million gallons per day, to 908 million gallons per day by 2040. Using data from the University of Florida Bureau of Economic and Business Research, the planning area's population is expected to have a 49% increase to 4.4 million people. While the Florida Department of Ag indicates the irrigated agricultural acreage is projected to remain relatively stable, demand is expected to increase slightly due to crop intensification. Okay. Okay. The CFWI technical teams were tasked with conducting a groundwater availability analysis for the region. Environmental measures used to assess the groundwater availability included 39 minimum flows and levels and related criteria. These included 29 lakes and wetlands, 6 springs, of which 2 are outstanding Florida springs, Wakaiwa and Rock, and 1 river segment, all with adopted MFLs. Also included was the adopted Southern Water Use Caution Area, saltwater intrusion minimum aquifer level, and the Upper Peace River and Ridge Lakes target wells located within the SWCA recovery strategy. Wetlands were also analyzed as part of the groundwater availability work. The technical team's analysis focused on groundwater-dominated wetlands that could be affected by groundwater pumping. Of the 1 million acres of wetlands, 189,000 acres of groundwater-dominated wetlands were assessed using groundwater modeling results. As part of our assessment, we also qualitatively looked at trends in terms of how groundwater pumping affects saline water levels in the aquifer, specifically looking at total dissolved solids. Through the assessments and groundwater modeling results, we have identified areas that are susceptible to groundwater withdrawals, which could have adverse impacts to water resources, including minimum flows and levels, lakes and springs, and wetlands. Okay, this table represents a summary of the groundwater availability assessment results based on groundwater modeling and the analysis of the minimum flows and levels and the wetlands mentioned earlier. The left column represents groundwater modeling runs by year and also indicates the approximate amount of groundwater in million gallons per day predicted to be withdrawn during that particular year. For the planning effort, we modeled several groundwater withdrawal scenarios. So as an example, in the 2014 model run, 11 criteria, including MFLs established for 8 lakes in Polk County and 2 springs, were predicted to not be met. By 2030 and then by 2040, the 2 outstanding Florida Springs MFLs in St. Johns River Water Management District, that's Wakaiwa and then Rock, were predicted to not be met. In addition, for the assessed wetlands, there is a predicted increase in the amount of stressed wetlands from 2014 to 2040 for both plains and ridge-type wetlands. Due to harm occurring already, due to the existing Southern Water Use Caution Area recovery strategy, and the additional MFLs being tripped beyond 2025, the groundwater availability limit was determined to be 760 million gallons per day. acknowledging that currently local management strategies will need to be implemented. As I noted, the planning level groundwater availability assessment indicates that further development of fresh groundwater withdrawals beyond 760 million gallons per day, indicated by the yellow dashed line, trips minimum flows and levels within the St. Johns River Water Management District. Above 760, two outstanding Florida Springs MFL flows and levels will not be met, and additional wetland acreage is predicted to be stressed. In less than 5 years, based on the analysis, we could exceed our fresh groundwater availability in the region. To help meet the needs of the projected 2040 groundwater demand of 855 million gallons per day, the 2020 plan has identified alternative water supply project options in the amount of 514 MGD and conservation potential in the amount of 50 MGD, as indicated to the right of the yellow dashed line on this chart. As noted previously, we have projected around 50 million gallons per day of conservation potential that could help to meet our future groundwater needs. Public supply and agriculture could achieve the most in conservation savings. This slide shows a breakdown of the 540 million gallons per day in project options to meet future water demands. Surface water sources make up the majority of project options, followed by brackish and non-traditional groundwater. In order to meet the surface water quantities identified here, water resource development projects would need to be implemented. Regarding our conclusions and next steps, this 2020 Central Florida Water Initiative Plan concludes that current and future water demands can be met through 2040 while sustaining water resources and related natural systems. As indicated here, the plan outlines an integrated approach that includes increased water conservation measures, development of alternative water supplies, additional project evaluation and modeling, and development of consistent rules and regulations. In terms of the local government requirements, with the approval of a regional water supply plan, there is a legislative mandate for facilities work plans to be completed by local governments and submitted to the Department of Economic Opportunity 18 months after approval. The facilities work plan must demonstrate sufficient water supply for at least the next 10 years. Water supply needs can be met with projects and/or conservation. In addition, local governments must amend their comprehensive plans to include the water supply facilities work plans. During the production of the 2020 plan, we had extensive outreach efforts. All of the Central Florida Water Initiative teams held regular meetings throughout the past 4 years with stakeholders. We held numerous meetings with regional planning councils, stakeholder and interest groups, advisory committees, professional organizations, and city councils and county commissions. In addition, we sent out quarterly newsletters and posted information and updates on the CFWI website. Continuing on our outreach, we held a technical methods workshop in April 2019 in Oakland, followed by 2 public workshops via webinar in April of 2020. Although the 2 public workshops were held via virtual Zoom webinars due to COVID-19, over 300 combined participants attended. The draft 2020 plan was released for public comment on March 15th, and the public comment period closed on May 15th. On the next 2 slides, I'll give an overview of the comments received during the public comment period. The Management Oversight Committee also had an opportunity to review the draft plan, and no comments or proposed changes were received. In regard to the comments on the plan, there is a comments and responses document that was developed and is now posted to the CFWI website if anybody's interested in reviewing that. From the public comment period, we received 239 comments from 90 individual stakeholders. I would also like to note that the offices of general counsel for all 3 districts reviewed the plan and concur that the 2020 CFWI Regional Water Supply Plan meets all applicable Florida statutes. Some of the comment highlights included topics on the need for increased water conservation, the concern regarding certain water supply project options, specifically surface water, and a request for additional details, the need for consistent rules and regulations for the CFWI planning area, concerns about minimum flows and levels and springs that will be reevaluated, and protection of the resources in general, tribal entitlements, and the need for continued updates to the groundwater model and to the groundwater availability in the region. Next, our schedule is to take this 2020 Central Florida Water Initiative Regional Water Supply Plan to the 3 districts' respective governing boards next month. Here, I want to pause just a second on the details. As you are aware, this has been a tremendous effort, and I would like to take the time to thank all of the district, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services staff, utilities stakeholders, our technical editor, and our committee members for all of their hard work and dedication. This is truly one of the most dynamic and collaborative planning processes in the state. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to answer any questions of the steering committee members, and we can take public comment. After that, I do have one additional slide with our requested steering committee actions. And now I will turn the meeting back over to Christine. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. At this time, we're going to open it up to public comment on the 2020 Regional Water Supply Plan. There is a general public comment period at the end of the meeting, so any comments not related to the Regional Water Supply Plan, we request be held for that public comment period. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand using the Zoom functions or using your phone. I'm going to share with you the instructions for the public comment. For those on the phone, a reminder, *9 will raise your hand and *6 will unmute and mute when it is your turn. Speakers will be given 3 minutes. When you are called upon, please state your full name and affiliation prior to providing your comment. With that, we're going to begin. Our first commenter is Brian Medjick. Brian, please unmute your phone and provide your comment.
Christine, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Can I start for real quick before you can start the time? This is Brian Medjick with the Liquid Solutions Group here on behalf of the Stopper +2 utility group. At past steering committee meetings, there hasn't been the 3-minute time limit on public comments that we recall. And we've prepared a presentation today on behalf of 7 utilities regarding the regional water supply plan, and we wanted to respectfully request that maybe that 3 minutes be adjusted given the magnitude of the group.
I can certainly appreciate the dedication to develop a substantial public comment. We have used the 3 minutes in the past, and if there had been a desire to provide a presentation that should have gone up through the mock process. We did have a number of mock meetings specifically dedicated to preparing for the steering committee. So I do not believe that an additional presentation at this time is an appropriate step because it has not gone through that process. But I certainly welcome a public comment.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, as I noted, I'm Brian Medjick with Liquid Solutions Group here on behalf of the Stopper +2 group utilities. We thank you for the opportunity to speak today. One thing that we want to focus on with the regional water supply plan is, the groundwater availability result of 760 MGD. That's a significant reduction from the groundwater availability result of 850 MGD in the 2020 regional water supply plan. And wanted to note that when that groundwater availability estimate was presented to the steering committee a year ago in October of 2019, it was presented as a planning level number. Of course, as Clara mentioned, the regional water supply plan is intended to be a 20-year roadmap for the region. That's regional in nature, and as such is updated every 5 years. And that in turn, that groundwater availability analysis was also regional in nature and really based on a single snapshot of the future looked at in 5-year increments. It excluded future increases in recharge and did not really consider, management measures such as wellfield optimization and recharge and other techniques that stakeholders can implement to, address their specific impacts. And as a result, the planning level estimate of groundwater availability was 760 MGD, and the plan, references, identifies project options and conservation to meet demands beyond 760 MGD. Along with that 760 MGD given in 2019 to the steering committee or presented, a list of recommendations were presented to the steering committee, including prioritizing the project options list in the regional water supply plan, based on geographic location, resource benefit, permittability, and cost effectiveness. Other recommendations included, doing more focused modeling to look at some of the management measures and techniques that stakeholders can implement to offset their demands, like future increases in recharge. It also recommended, continuing to develop and implement MFL prevention and recovery strategies, encourage funding for construction of AWS projects, and the continued good work of the DMIT in monitoring and data collection. The Stopper +2 group really feels these recommendations are a critical and essential companion to the plan. In particular, that now that groundwater availability assessment appears to be, being used as a driver for regulatory resource allocation limits in the parallel CFWI rule process. We really feel those recommendations from the RAT a year ago should be implemented. Performing those additional modeling is important because we feel, a lot of those management measures can address some of the localized impacts and maybe even extend regional groundwater availability. As you address the local impacts, the regional impacts will be, addressed as well. We also feel it's really important to refine that project options list to really line up, where's the specific future needs, by county, what are the specific projects that can be implemented to meet those needs, and what are the timing of those needs given this groundwater availability estimate that's moved forward in time and is being implemented by rule, and then looking at the cost and funding opportunities for those projects. And finally, the Stopper +2 group really has always been a proponent and supportive of developing those MFL prevention and recovery strategies, and really feel, given everything that's going on, those need implemented more quickly. So, like I said, the Stopper +2 group has been a regional partner and working with the group for a long time, and looks forward to continue to working with its regulatory partners and other stakeholders to protect the environment while identifying cost-efficient projects to meet future demands. To achieve this goal, the group requests the following to supplement the plan. 1, to implement the recommendations to do additional modeling and a more detailed roadmap of the project options. 2, to take caution with using the regional nature of the groundwater availability for the plan in developing a rule, and that any rules derived from this plan allow for creative and flexible solutions to be implemented by stakeholders to address their permit-specific projected impacts. And finally, that the MFL and MFL reevaluations that are currently under development and any associated MFL prevention and recovery strategies be expedited, because those will really serve to address a lot of the issues identified in the plan. We thank you for your time today and all the hard work that the group has been doing.
Thank you, Mr. Magic. At this time, we will go to Michael Clyburn. Michael?
Thank you. My name is Mike Clyburn. I'm a representative of the Friends of the Wekiva River, and we appreciate the work that's gone into this project, but we do have some concerns. Specifically, we don't see that the plan provides specific plans to reduce the currently permitted groundwater withdrawals to achieve the 760 MGD sustainable yield that was identified in the plan. The plan estimates that the Wekiva River won't meet its MFL by 2026, and Wekiva Springs won't meet its MFL by 2027. But the plan doesn't identify specific strategies within the Wekiva Springs shed to assure that the withdrawals will not exceed the sustainable yield by that date, by those dates. Also, Palm Springs is already shown to not meet its MFL, and San Lando Springs will not meet its MFL under the 2014 reference condition. So the Friends of the Wekiva River believe that the groundwater withdrawals should be reduced to allow Palm and San Lando Springs to meet their MFLs. Now, we've discussed this with the Water Management District, and they note that the MFLs in the Wekiva Basin are being reevaluated. But we note that the current MFLs for the Wekiva River and Wekiva Springs were used to set the sustainable yield of 760 MGD. So we believe that the plan should be revised to identify measures to reduce the sustainable yield so that Palm and San Lando Springs will meet their current MFLs. We believe that more conservation measures should be identified, including restrictions on lawn irrigation and requiring more stringent tiered rate structures. So thank you for this opportunity to submit our comments.
Thank you. Next up, we have Billy Kemper.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Good morning.
Okay. I went to a seminar several years ago put on by the University of Florida and IFAS, and it talked about the global perspective of agriculture by 2050. And at that, in fact, the university still has this presentation on file, but it talked about the world population increasing to the point that the Americas will probably be the breadbasket for the world because of the soil climates and such as that. And that, I understand the aquifer. One of the things that was very concerning to me was a presentation I watched recently about South Florida's plans to actually restrict or not allow additional waters being taken from the upper Kissimmee. So anyhow, but in your planning, and I know you do every 5 years, so this all may be addressed, but that is a concern that people need to think about, and those that make in the decision-making process should look up that presentation. Thank you. Bye. I'll have more comments on the changes that we hope took place in the CFWI language. Christine, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kemper. Next up, we have Chris Farrel.
Hey, good morning. It's Chris Farrel with Audubon, Florida. First, I just want to thank everybody involved in creating the water supply plan. It's definitely a lot of work, and it brings together a lot of important information for us all to use as we move forward. I just want to quickly point out today that, we've reached a point where almost the entire peninsula of Florida is recognized as a water resource caution area. The plan, correctly identifies the many MFLs we have in the CFWI region and anticipation for more waters to become to have MFLs set for them. many acres of wetlands that are already stressed from our current levels of water use. And unfortunately, this will also increase more acres of wetland under pressure as we move forward. So given this situation and the fact that, we still have to do this remediation work, we need to do restoration work, we need to bring waters back to their MFL levels, and hopefully beyond, because MFL levels really are a minimum where you're treading that line of harm. Given that we need to do all this and reverse the trends in our wetlands, it is a little concerning that the plan still identifies additional groundwater that can be used, and also, we understand that there have to be a range of projects that are considered, and so surface water projects are presented, but Audubon definitely feels we have other directions to go. So we're just hoping that as we move forward, that the water management districts and local governments will really prioritize recharge projects and wastewater reuse projects, developing alternative water supplies rather than going to the sources, continuing to use the sources that have led to the problems that we're facing and we're trying to combat today. So we're just, we understand that the plan is what it is and it shows the range of options. We're just hoping that we get, we realize we need a significant change from what we've done in the past. And we're looking for strong leadership to really push the options that will provide the best way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. I don't see any other further hands raised. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Muirhead again to present the action items. One moment. Ms. Muirhead?
Okay, thank you, Christine. And thank you again. At this time, we would like to request 2 actions from the steering committee today. The first is to endorse and approve the final draft 2020 Central Florida Water Initiative Regional Water Supply Plan and the associated appendices. And the second is to encourage the district's respective governing boards to consider approval of the final draft 2020 Central Florida Water Initiative Regional Water Supply Plan and the associated appendices.
Thank you, Ms. Muirhead.
Thank you.
At this time, Chair, I'm going to turn it over to you for steering committee discussion and action.
Thank you, Christine. And before kind of asking for comments from the steering committee members, I'll just say one, as you mentioned, much thanks to those who have been participating and involved in developing the plan and those stakeholders that were highly engaged in the process, and the department and the water management districts and DACs, all understand that there is a reduction that's going to be needed in groundwater permitting in order to be protective of the water resources, and by shifting to more alternative water supply projects, that there is added cost in that. And over the last 2 years, the state has been able to approve and get $80 million for alternative water supply projects. This past year was able to get an additional 40 million, close to 45 million, that based on some carryover from last year. But to really just make the point that the state recognizes that it's going to need projects, and the alternative water supply projects for this upcoming fiscal year, we focused on CFWI as a recognition that the state also wants to support and provide funding to help offset some of the groundwater withdrawal reductions that are going to be needed in order to protect the both the groundwater, wetlands, and other water resources impacted from withdrawals. And so the current AWS project list that we've put together and has been approved, includes 12 projects equaling over close to $30 million, just shy of $29 million out of the $45 million that was designated for alternative water supply, focusing on projects to the benefit of Wekiva and Rock and groundwater supplies in Polk County and those areas where we are seeing the need for alternative water supply. And we're right now starting to reach out to the districts to be able to provide those projects that we selected for funding, and want to thank all those who submitted projects. We got a lot of really good projects, and so hopefully that will continue as the governor seeks additional funding and emphasis on environmental funding, and see an additional funding for alternative water supply, moving forward. So with that, I'll stop and just ask any of the steering committee members if they have any comments they'd like to make.
I do. This is Ms. Dolan.
Go ahead.
Obviously, it's indicated that our natural systems are already experiencing stress at their current pumping levels. We could exceed our groundwater availability in less than 5 years. And again, I've expressed this before, our two outstanding Florida springs, Wekiva and Rock, will no longer meet their minimum flows and levels in the near future if our current pumping trends continue. Obviously we need to protect the springs and our other natural resources and ensure that we have water supply for future needs. In order to accomplish this, we've got to continue to diversify our water supply sources and also increase conservation efforts, which are outlined in the plan. The alternative water supply projects are necessary, and I understand the financial ramifications, but we've also got to protect these resources. So I thank everyone for all of their efforts. Claire did a great presentation, but the team has worked extensively in putting this together for many years. It's not a one and done thing. It's got to continue beyond 2025, 2040. It's a continual plan, and we just have to keep moving forward with it and protecting our water supply so that we can continue to live the life that we live in Florida and enjoy the environment that we have. So I thank you all for your hard work, and we just have to keep plugging forward with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dolan. Additional comments?
Yes, this is Todd Swingle with Toho Water Authority and representing utilities. I'm really, as I sit here and listen to comments, I'm just struck by the similarity of all the comments. I think every stakeholder group I hear about protection of the environment, and that we need to make sure that we are protective of environmental resources. I also hear about the comment for meeting local needs and the recognition. We just heard from Friends of the Wekiva and some specific concerns that they have, and when when this region and the model does reach coast to coast, those local challenges are very important, because just as it's been stated, there is a need to continue to diversify our water supplies. And that's a challenge, because while there is a very significant and well-developed plan that includes an entire range of solutions, we're still lacking some of the specificity of how to move those forward, how those tie into specific impacts, how those tie into specific needs, how those tie into specific uses across all stakeholder groups. So this is challenging. I greatly appreciate all the work that has gone into this. I think one of the keys for me is that we truly do have to recognize what this plan has served. This is an update. This plan in its prior iterations has been developed as a regional solution or a regional planning document. And then beyond this plan is where the details start to then come into play. And those details are becoming ever more important with the time constraints that are identified in this plan. So as we consider moving this plan forward, I do think it's important that it not be moved forward in a vacuum, that it be moved forward in recognition of some of the other things that are critical to the solutions that as every commenter from the public has identified that are not provided in the specificity that it takes to deliver those improvements, those mitigative measures, those operational changes, even the launch of the projects that are contained in the plan. And some of the things that have been identified from a variety of speakers are continuing to expedite the MFLs and MFL reevaluations and the prevention and recovery strategies. The continued need to look at localized issues and how those translate into the regional findings that are contained in this plan. And that also converts then into the what that means in terms of specific utilities, specific users across all stakeholder groups, and the solutions that they employ that both, as the prior speaker mentioned, meet the needs of the region as well as being protective of national resources. So with that, I will stop. I would ask the chair, I do have, am willing to make a proposal for a motion for approval, but would like to add some of those caveats as well when the chair is ready to receive that.
Thank you, Tom. Good comments. Next, any other committee members?
This is Chris. I'd like to jump in just because I think I'm going to segue a bit with Todd's comments as well, and I think that he raised a couple of good issues, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to go back to 373-0465 subparent 1 subparent C, on the intent, and kind of lead that into some comments. You're looking at CFWI, and many of us have worn, in some cases, several hats in this process over time. But we're looking at a quote, unified process to address current long-term water supply needs of Central Florida without causing harm to the water resources and associated natural systems. And again, it's a holistic process. And I think I also want to tie this to the next topic that we're going to discuss, which is the regulatory. And many of us have been involved in any number of regional water supply plans around the state. We've been involved in SWCA as that's developed and been implemented over time. And we've seen how, the plan and then the resulting regulations are part of this continuing, symbiotic type of a concept that we're trying to implement. And by that, I mean, the regulations have to be, an integral part of the plan, and the plan has to kind of talk about how the regulations, along with the projects that are identified and the conservation measures and the other, the big picture pieces are coming together and are meeting that ultimate, unified process and unified intent. And it's interesting because we get a couple of choices. There's those broader based issues and those initial concepts that end up in the plan. And I think that staff has done just an amazing job. I mean, we've had many different conversations over time as it relates to the development of the plan. That said, I think that, and again, we get choices as to where to do this, but I think there is still a bit of disconnect, particularly between the regional water supply and the draft regulations. And we don't want these plans to be state of the union documents. We don't want them to be kind of generalized documents that don't get us, be it modeling wise, be it whatever wise, to where we want to go when we team it with the regulations. And I think we've done a great job with the plan, but I think I do want to second Todd and kind of talk about how there is still some disjointedness and we do get future bites at the apple in the 5-year iteration. So we do have this adaptive management process, but I just in a personal experience, I had requested a while back that we have the refresher given the new members of the steering committee, on the modeling. That's something that we haven't necessarily gotten to yet, and I think we've got a real good grasp on the overarching modeling as it relates to the CFWI and where those triggers are, but then the degrees of locality in terms of the demands, be it in Polk, say the SWACA area, be it some of the Osceola, be it the various areas, subregions within the CFWI. That's something that is iterative. That's something that it does play into the regs, but it's also something that plays into the broader picture of the of the plan. So I think, again, to summarize, I think we've done a great job. I think we've worked really hard. I want to thank my staff. I want to thank everybody on the DEP and the Water Management District side. You've had people that have been pulling in the same boat, trying to get us in the same direction for a long time. I think they've done just an amazing job in doing this. And again, I don't think you can allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good. However, to second where Todd was at, I think that there's additional analyses that can be identified. I think that there are additional conversations that probably need to be had. And even as we continue to keep the positive momentum moving forward, I think that it behooves us as folks that are being expected by the constituency of this region and the taxpayers of the state, it behooves us to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to continue to identify how we are most effective moving forward, how the plan plays into the regulations, and then how that plays into an iterative process to continue to tackle the challenges, be they ag related, be they utility related, be they water management related within this region. So I will apologize for being too verbose as usual. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, no, again, good comments and appreciate those comments. Any additional from the steering committee members?
Jim Murphy.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, in concert with what Chris and Todd have brought up, sort of an aside of when you listen to that, you look at the fact that this is a plan which allows for the details of a blueprint to be generated once it moves down the road. Time can be a blessing or a curse when you have something of this magnitude that is, I don't want to say reworked consistently, but once it's in place, it can get adjusted. And I think Todd was leaning towards that when he was looking to make a motion for this. I think a motion to keep it moving with the statute that it in the condition that it's currently written will allow the fine tuning to become the blueprint and the plan to meet the MFLs and to meet the other criteria that might need some additional support or adjustment. But from my perspective, I would like, if Todd's ready or somebody, to make a motion to get this approved as a final draft and keep this moving, are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, thank you. Jennifer, any comments before we make a motion?
No, thank you.
Very good. Okay, well, I'm gonna, since seeing no other committee comments, ask for a motion to endorse and approve the final draft 2020 CFWI Regional Water Supply Plan and the associated appendices, and encourage the respective governing boards to consider approval of the final draft Regional Water Supply Plan and associated appendices.
So
So
this is Todd Swingle. I would like to consider a motion that, and just with one additional follow-up from Chris's comments, that we do have another bite at the apple in 5 years. There's rules being proposed that have significant impacts on the region in less than 5 years. And so there are pieces to come from the implementation of components of this plan that cannot wait. And as you've heard today, utilities have been actively involved in the development of the regional water supply plan. We've heard a lot about that we have two matters moving forward. One is adoption of this plan, which we're here to talk about today. And the other is an ongoing rulemaking effort that has stemmed from the plan. No plan's perfect. This plan is not perfect. And the utilities have let their concerns be known, so I won't rehash them. Utilities are concerned about the planning tools being used as a basis for CFWI rules and their current state. And as you've heard, that we do have some concerns and issues with the current state of that rule proposal. We're now actively engaged in that process. My motion for approval of this plan should not be construed as an endorsement at this time of the rule, but I do support moving the plan forward. So with that, I move to support, I move to submit the 2020 CFWI regional water supply plan to the Water Management District boards for approval, accompanied by the following recommendations that recognize the complexity of integrated water supply planning in the CFWI region. Expedite completing MFLs and MFL reevaluations currently under development and any associated MFL prevention and recovery strategies. Prioritize launch of a collaborative multi-stakeholder process to better and more thoroughly evaluate management measures to address identified local and regional impacts, including focused modeling, and to provide a more detailed roadmap of the project options included in the plan for regional stakeholders. And finally, to allow for solutions that address permit-specific projected impacts in rules that are derived from this plan.
Thank you. And I will just want to emphasize to each of the committee members that approval of moving this plan forward does not equate to giving approval to any CFWI rule developed by the department. Those rules can be adopted as is with or without the regional water supply plan. And as Todd had mentioned, a lot of different stakeholders are engaged in that rule development, and changes and edits are continuing to be made as we speak to address some of the concerns that have been raised with the impacts that regulatory process might include. So just make that clear that you're not approving or signing off on the draft rule by approving moving forward with the regional water supply plan. So with the additional comments and language from Todd to the motion, do we have any comments on that or anything from any of the other members?
I think you need a second, Mr. Chair. I'll provide that to facilitate discussion.
Okay. All right. So the motion that I made along with the caveats included by Todd, we have a second, and we'll go by voice vote. Todd?
Could we
sorry.
restate the motion?
Yes.
Restate the motion?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, I think Todd made because Todd just did make a formal motion, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Yeah, my second was for Todd's motion.
Okay.
Who
Yeah.
seconded the motion? Who made the second?
It's Chris Pettit. I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Pettit.
I should have announced.
Thank you.
Yeah. Will you repeat it one more time, Todd, so we can all be clear?
I will repeat it, and just as an overall summary, my motion is moving the plan forward to approval at the boards, but with some additional recommendations to the boards to clarify the needs and to make sure the needs for this additional work is clear in the recommendations to those boards. So the motion was I move to submit the 2020 CFWI Regional Water Supply Plan update to the Water Management District boards for approval, accompanied by the following recommendations that recognize the complexity of integrated water supply planning in the region. Expedite completing MFLs and MFL reevaluations currently under development and any associated MFL prevention and recovery strategies. Prioritize launch of a collaborative multi-stakeholder process to better and more thoroughly evaluate management measures that address identified local and regional impacts, including focused modeling, and to provide a more detailed roadmap of project options for regional stakeholders. And finally, to allow for solutions that address permit-specific projected impacts in rules derived from the plan.
Yeah, the only thing I would say on the recommendations being added to it is I have some hesitancy to tie rule language to a regional water supply plan that is going for approval to the governing boards, where the rule development is completely a separate process that's done by the department. It's outside of the CFWI steering committee, and I wouldn't say authority, but just it's not part of anything related to this process. But the other recommendations I feel are suitable recommendations. We don't have any ability to direct the districts to do anything, but recommending that they expedite MFLs. I don't have any concern with that, but I would request not to include the third point on that, just to make sure there's no gets us in a situation where we're tying those two, rulemaking and regional water supply and development together. And
just so I can kind of try to follow what I believe to be the proper procedure here, we had some recommended actions. We heard an amendment and a second from Mr. Swingle and Mr. Pettit to amend with those three elements. I believe, Adam, you're making a motion to amend that language to include only the first two elements to expedite completion of MFL reevaluations and recovery prevention strategies, and prioritize the launch of a collaborative stakeholder group to evaluate management measures and focused modeling, but to not include the third element listed. Is that the motion? Are you making that motion, Adam?
Yes, and I'd kind of open that up to the second one, to the members that are representing the water management districts, because that's, something that it's, although just a recommendation, still something that I want to make sure that the governing boards wouldn't be in a position where they feel like they have to adopt those recommendations in order for the governing boards to approve the regional water supply plan, because that, I think, could create just unintended consequences with moving the regional water supply plan forward.
So let me just go ahead and address that. I as the original owner of the motion, I'll accept the amendment with just the caveat that this that be clearly reflected in the minutes.
Todd, I have a question. Jim Murphy.
Yes.
On modifying what's being asked for currently, isn't like the MFLs, isn't there a list created every year, an updated list for that? And the other things that you're asking for, aren't they part and parcel of the package the way it currently stands? Adding the modifications to it, to me, is getting I don't want to say convoluted, but it seems like we're trying to do a lot with codicils and add-ons to something that is already a pretty big package to kind of contend with these, where's the urgency of the things that you're asking for without timelines? I think it's a loose, not very specific add-ons when there's things that says, okay, we'll be done immediately, or urgency, et cetera. It's adding to things that are already sort of in the package that need to be addressed. I'm just confused about the add-ons to the motion. I guess I don't like them at this point.
No, I appreciate that. That's a great comment. And yes, I don't think these are anything new, but the pace is new. So we've been dealing with 5-year updates to this plan for a while. And we're going to continue with 5-year updates. But the pace of change that is prompted by this update in the plan is substantial. You heard it from the utilities about the impacts on our planning processes and delivery of projects. You heard it from the local stakeholder groups about the urgency as it relates to protection of environment. So while I do appreciate Adam's comments as well, that the rule and the planning approvals are distinct and separate activities, they are inextricably linked. The 760 number that is contained in this plan is serving as, in essence, the sole basis for some of the proposals that are in the rule. And really the basis of the rule and the approach to modifications of the rule. So despite the fact that they are distinctly separate processes, they are very, very tightly linked. I heard from every public comment about the concerns about the pace of change on really from all perspectives. And we heard 3 different things that have been brought up: protection of natural resources, meeting the regional needs, and diversifying and deploying projects. My addition of these items is to simply emphasize that increase in pace that is necessary for us to answer the needs of the region.
But I guess my concern is the package, the way it sits, seems to already have urgency. It has review. It has poignancy that doesn't need an exclamation point to the motion, is what I'm getting at. I like it the way it sits. I don't like it with the motion add-ons, I guess. I don't, to me, it's like everybody that's done something to put this together, now there's just 2 more little things we're going to add to it. Again, it becomes a timing issue. Is it a plan? Does it become a blueprint? And you can always add something to anything, I guess, depending on what you like or don't like about it. But I think a plan in place as derived with the effort that's been put into it gives us something to go forward with. Sans
Mr. Chairman,
the add-ons.
This is Susie Dolan. I agree with what you're saying. My suggestion, if I may, is that we maybe do a clean motion with what the steering committee actions are, or request is, and then we do a separate motion that addresses these other points that Todd has made. Maybe we attempt to do it that way, as opposed to trying to lump it all in one confusing motion that addresses everything. I mean, I think that might be a better way to maybe kind of get where we're going or head that direction. But I think it's important to do a clean motion with the endorsement and the encouragement to basically the clean motion that the steering committee has requested, and then address Todd's issues separately in a separate motion, or however you want to do that. But that would be my, that would be what I would like to see, and I would be okay with that.
This is Chris. I'm gonna hop back in real quick, just because, I mean, Christine, I think, for those on the phone, or for those on the Zoom, is there a way that you can put like a Word document or something up here, so we can put kind of the bullets up? And I'm getting, I think we may get kind of turned around a little bit here, because we've got a lot of stuff flying, just so we can have the bullets on the screen, if possible. The other thing, Ms. Dolan, with all due respect, I'm not sure I can get on board with that simply from a legal angle, because what we're doing is taking action on the regional water supply plan. And what Todd is looking to do is in conjunction with the plan, and I'll also kind of go to the other issue, which is the rules are intrinsically linked with the plan per the terms of statute and can't be separated therefrom. In fact, there's statutory language that clearly states that the rules are supposed to be developed in consultation with the state agencies, the water management districts, and interested parties. So I'm a little reluctant because we're moving the plan. The plan is then something that needs to be adopted by the water management districts. Any clean motion that then segregates would result in those other addendums then being simply encouragement that could or could not be undertaken. And the whole idea is that, to go back to my original quote, this is a holistic process. And the whole idea is to move this process, in conjunction, all the moving parts. And yes, it's going to be iterative. Yes, we've got to get it going, but I think by segregating out the various components, we put ourselves in a situation where the regional plan continues to move, but these orphans kind of end up out there outside of being reflected in the minutes of this meeting. That, again, we've seen steering committees change like, I don't know, underwear on a daily basis. So I think this is something that we need to, from a governance exercise, we need to kind of enshrine exactly where we expect to be going in this process.
Chris,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Chris. I don't think anybody here is looking to prolong an event and or not keep it moving down the road the way it's supposed to. I think this is the third time, maybe the fourth time I've seen this program over a couple of years, as everybody else has, and everybody's put a lot of effort into it. And I think that the generation of the motion, the way it's listed, is exactly what the intent of the process is. The orphans or the other outliers that you want to add, or things that are important, get blended into the process as it matures. But without it in place, it'll never get in place, because things that just keep getting added and twigged and done outside of the meetings and sessions and seminars and public comments and all those things, at some point you have to say, okay, this is a good motion. We wouldn't have presented it collectively if it wasn't. I would like to leave the motion as it stands. Again, I go back to that. I have a problem editing what we're being asked to look at.
Yeah, and this is Adam. Once the regional water supply plan is adopted by the governing boards, the next step is for the governing boards to then adopt the details and how that plan is going to be implemented. And that includes kind of the MFLs, and it may be more appropriate that be where the emphasis on expediting the development or what projects necessary to meet MFLs. And I do feel like, not having any of this prior to right now, it does give me some concern just that if we submit something that's got these other aspects, even if they're deemed recommendations, that still will if one governing board adopts the plan but doesn't implement a additional committee or do something, does that create a uncertainty from a legal standpoint moving forward? I think Todd's points and recommendations are well-founded. I just feel like it's not appropriate attached to this motion, but I feel like it would be more appropriate as the process continues and the implementation of the plan through the water management districts and the specific MFLs get adopted. I think I would respectfully ask Todd to withdraw the additional language and that we approve or make a vote on the motion as originally dictated.
I would second that.
I will withdraw, but for consideration of another motion. I just want to reemphasize, my intent is not to, complicate this plan, but it is to ensure that we have in our communications with, as we move on from this plan, a clear communication of the understanding of the need to accelerate pace, to address both the water supply challenges that exist and the environmental challenges that exist. We have obviously sitting here on this committee, representatives of various stakeholder groups and representatives of individual water management district boards. Every one of us has a significant additional representation either on those boards or from our stakeholder groups. That it's important that the concerns about moving forward from this plan and what I see as pretty strong concurrence about the need to very proactively move forward from this plan, that is conveyed. So I couldn't support a more something that is more in line with the action that was proposed to the steering committee, but coupled with a transmittal that indicates the discussion of this steering committee and the concurrence that is of the need to continue to expedite these solutions and the collaborative design and implementation of these plans, because I don't necessarily concur, I do not concur that some of the urgency regarding solutions and the timing of solutions compared to the complexity of implementing those solutions, I don't know that is adequately conveyed by the plan just as it stands.
Okay. No, thank you, Todd, for withdrawing the motion so that we can move forward. And then is there a proposal for what you would like to see to kind of provide the increased urgency to implement those MFL recovery plans?
Mr. Chair, it's Chris. I mean, a suggestion could be, the minutes to this meeting, that I think you're hearing a clear indication that, again, there's a recognition that the water management districts, at least as it relates to MFLs and rulemaking tied to this plan, and anything tied to, again, the holistic process that we're entrenched in, those rulemakings, although they occur within the water management districts, it is the intent that in these reexaminations, it is the intent that it occurs within this holistic, process with everybody in a regional stance, cooperative in moving forward. I think the issue with that, the only outstanding there is Todd had mentioned, the task forces and the various pieces that we know we are going to need to continue this iterative process of finding, where the nuances lie within this. So I guess my initial question for Todd is, I mean, given that we have, this is a sunshine body, we've got all these comments on the record, the minutes are going to clearly reflect the conversation. They're going to clearly reflect the public comment. They're going to clearly reflect the give and take and references to where we're at. As the maker of the motion, I would ask him whether that would suffice or whether we need to work on whether something else would be needed.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, I would also, point out that we have representatives from the water management districts on the committee hearing those comments. They're well-founded comments. We also have the EDs from, I know, St. John's and Southwest listening. So, I think those comments have been made and are been heard from those at the districts. And I think there's having this platform to make those, maybe sufficient to make sure that, those comments are provided. And so I think unless Todd has any Anything else, I would go ahead and ask for the motion as originally provided and move forward. But first, Todd, if you want to respond.
My response would be, I would just ask for that commitment of, and not as a vote, but just for that commitment of reflecting this conversation and the recognition and the willingness of what I see as all of the stakeholder groups to continue this CFWI process, or an evolution of the CFWI process that looks to really put these solutions in place, developing those details that are now very urgent based upon the connection of this plan to potential rulemaking, or to the rulemaking and potential outcomes of that rulemaking.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And, I agree with your sentiments, and I think moving forward, as the districts adopt the specificity of implementing that, they'll have those comments and the need for urgency to be able to, recognize that the plan and its timelines need to be also reflected in the timelines for implementing the things that need to be implemented to meet those timelines. So I'm going to go back, ask for a motion to endorse and approve the final 2020 CFWI Regional Water Supply Plan and associated appendices, and encourage the governing boards to consider approval of the 2020 Regional Water Supply Plan and associated appendices.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All right. And voice vote, Todd?
Yes.
Chris?
I was hoping for one additional piece of discussion, Mr. Chair, just to get it on the record, if that works.
Sure. Can we go forward with vote and then we'll have final comments?
If that works. I've got a real issue with this one. So yes, with significant reservations.
Susan?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. So show the motion passes. And Chris, for additional comment.
I just want to get on the record that the last time this plan was adopted, if I remember, and there was a motion, I believe DEP made the motion, not that you were sitting in that chair, Mr. Chair. There were recommendations attached to the motion, and everybody it was aimed at the teams, but it was aimed at the process. All those recommendations were accepted, and to my knowledge, things moved forward. So, the attachment of recommendations to a motion, I just want to get on the record, is not exactly a foreign concept. And understood, I think we've got the discussion on the record. And again, just to kind of make sure that there's the understanding and the clarity. I mean, I think there's some work to be done. It is an iterative process. I think that the plan, we're talking about the plan. The plan is that general roadmap, there's an understanding that things have to be integrated and be consistent. But, the regulations have to be, part of that and recognized within the plan. The regulations have to be done properly, and the process needs to provide that surety, that clarity to the stakeholders that want to make sure that we're protecting the natural resources, to the stakeholders and the permittees that need their certainty, and they need to know what is going on the ground as they come in, and what the expectations are. And frankly, the playbook through which this plan should provide, that everybody gets to lock arms. And we need a lot more than $80 million a year. These projects and making sure that we're going to be able to protect the natural resources and provide for the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that we need to to provide with this area of the world is vital on us getting this right. And for all the talk of we can wait, we've been at this 20 years, and we need to, there is some very strong urgency to get this right and move this forward. I'm really happy about all the work that we've done. I'm really happy that we're doing that. I just think that the push to get the plan moving, I just don't think it can subsume some of the work and real hard work, dirty work that we have ahead of us to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind as part of this process. And I appreciate the ability to make that comment, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you for that. So I guess now I kick it back over to Christine to go to our next agenda item. Unless there's any other comments related to this, there will be opportunity for final steering committee and public comment, but just want to make sure nobody is left out of making comments on the plan if they want to.
Okay.
All right, Christine.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move to our for information agenda item, which is a regulatory update from Ms. Christina Koger with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Ms. Koger, give me one moment and I will pull up your presentation. Ms. Koger, you should have control of the screen. And I
Great.
hope you all can see her presentation.
Thank you, Christine. And good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Today I have, as Christine noted, an informational item for you to provide a brief update on the department's rulemaking progress and our schedule. So as we heard earlier, Section 373.0465 Florida statute includes several provisions that are guiding this rulemaking effort. The rule develops uniformity between the 3 water management districts on consumptive use permitting where appropriate. And this includes following similar processes with permit applications and providing singular definitions for certain terms. The rules also include annual conservation goals for all water users and a new variance process. And in addition to those requirements, the draft rules provide additional measures to address the resource concerns identified from the assessment in the regional water supply plan. In terms of the process, the department in partnership with the water management districts, with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and stakeholders has been in rule development since 2016. When we last spoke at the May meeting, the department was about to restart our rulemaking efforts. And since then, we have had 3 rule development workshops and 2 formal comment periods on the draft rule. So currently we are reviewing and editing the rules in response to stakeholder comments that we received through the end of September. We've also continued to meet with stakeholders and incorporate their additional feedback over the last month or so. We are looking to finalize the draft rules in the next couple of weeks. And as was requested at the last workshop, we'll also provide the final draft rule to stakeholders. Our next step then would be to move forward and publish the notice of proposed rule, which we plan to do this by the end of November. And that's all I have for my rulemaking update today. I'd be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Christina. Questions for the committee members?
Christina, it's Chris. Can you, awfully, okay, I get, okay. I've got the overarching update, and I think, given the involvement of everybody, that's been on it, I think that there's, I think a familiarity with where we're at. And I know, Mr. Chair, you guys have been great in terms of looking at various stakeholders coming in and making comments and whatnot. Given the fluidity of the situation, I would like, if possible, for the steering committee, just because I think I'm real aware of kind of where the engagement's been on the agricultural side and where some of the generalized language is there an ability to provide kind of an update as to, for everybody on this call, just kind of where the tenor has been and kind of where we're going with this, kind of where the comments have been and where the areas that we're kind of continuing to figure out the most efficient and effective way forward lie?
Yeah, I mean, I can give a little bit of a kind of overview of that, and Christina can jump in to add where I misspeak. But yeah, so we started out with the proposed rule draft early this summer, and I think, and Christina can let me know if I'm overstating, but I know we had over 100 comments. We've got multiple written comments and then met with various stakeholders from utility groups, agricultural groups, environmental groups, and kind of made changes and some additions in subsequent drafts, focusing on the conservation goal, looking at the per capita, how that's determined, to ensure that we're not that we're representing consistently across the different districts, and then I put out a subsequent draft and got some additional comments, and now we're continuing to meet and have met again one-on-one with different groups that had requested those meetings, and now we're in the process of incorporating those additional recommended responses where it's feasible. And so those were the main. I think there's comments that we received about the 2025 demand cap, and how that would be implemented, and the permitting. So we provided some additional clarification on how the permit updating would go. We made some revisions in response to some of the agricultural comments to make sure that some of their concerns were addressed. And I was trying to remember the specific issue, but I know Christina can help me out with that. But so that's kind of where we've been, and we're hopeful that as we move forward over the next few weeks and making those additional revisions in response to comments that we received, that we'll be able to have a rule that meets our statutory requirement, is protective of the resource that we're being tasked with providing for, and also not being overly or unreasonably burdensome to those users in the CFWI, and also then with the state, with our funding and helping to assist in developing those alternative water supplies that are going to be necessary to offset the over permitting that has gone on, that now we're kind of having to pull back. But Christina, maybe you can add a little bit more specificity to what I said.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you covered it in large part. I mean, the rules have what's required in the specifics that I noted on my first slide. A lot of the revisions have revolved around, as Adam said, the demonstrated 2025 demand, and some of the approaches to conservation. It definitely has been an iterative process. We've revised it and come up with two revised drafts, I guess, over the summer. And we're getting ready, I guess, for our third kind of final draft. And so we received comments just in this summer's realm. We received 32 comments from 32 stakeholders or groups, but that totaled nearly 300 individual comments. So we really we're going through each of those comments and again trying to make that balance, as Adam said, of resource protection while also recognizing the concerns of stakeholders. So it's largely focused on our current version is largely focused on the demonstrative 2025 demand, some of the conservation requirements, and some other unique provisions of the rule.
I appreciate that summary, Mr. Chair, and Christina. Again, thank you for the really hard work and the great job that that you guys have done in terms of the continuing process. If I may ask, given that I guess we're not going through the language of the current language of the rule, which I guess is understandable. I know it's in flux. Can we talk about just kind of some of the remaining sticky wickets that are kind of out there? I mean, I know I've got just a couple of notes on the ag side in committee comment, but can we kind of talk through some of the sticky wickets and when we might, for the benefit of all the stakeholders and consulting participants, when we might be able to anticipate a final draft rule language being available for perusal?
Yeah, any comments that any of the committee members want to make in regard to what they've been able to see so far from the draft rules? We're happy to hear those. And another reason we wanted to just open the conversation and have this update was just to give that opportunity for those in the general public to be able to make comments. So if you have specific comments that you'd like to make, I know you've been involved with the development of the rule language with your staff and the DEP and St. John Water Management District staff. But as far as the draft rule, we're hoping that it will be towards the, I want to say maybe third week of November. It all just kind of, we're continuing to work with the different stakeholders on language that's, been provided through comments and, making sure working through the district staff as far as, how that language we don't want to necessarily making sure we're not, putting in language that would have unintended consequences and just things like that go through the general process of, adding and revising rule language. But if you'd like to make comments, please do.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir. I thought we were still in questions, but if I can take the opportunity, that'd be great. I mean, just on behalf of us and at DAX, and I will say on behalf of the folks that we've coordinated with, including the DEP and water management districts and agricultural stakeholders. We really appreciate the modifications and the responsiveness of the department as it relates to our concerns. I'm figuring in public comment you'll probably hear some additional pieces. We really had a couple of things that are kind of outstanding, and again, it goes to some of the comments that were made on the plan, frankly, and some of the urgency that's out there as it relates to getting at a couple of things. And again, I'll go back to just as an analogy that forgive me, I do this, but when we went through, and many of us went through CupCon, you went through CupCon, and you're trying to get at consistency, and CFWI again is that unified process. We're trying to get to consistency and clear expectations when you've got 3 different water management districts that are issuing permits within this regulatory environment, within this integrated area. you know, the intent I think we're seeing come out in terms of the 2 and 10, 5 and 10, the allocations. However, again, we end up putting ourselves in a situation where we may fall short of the overall goal of consistency unless we're able to find those fundamental, you know, clear lines and points of reference as it relates to the underlying methodologies of, you know, determining the demands. And I think there's still some question as it relates to the rule language and how we're going to kind of tackle this moving forward. And there's been other areas in the state where we ask ourselves, you know, what a 1 in 10 really means, or 2 in 10 really means for planning purposes, permitting purposes. And this is something that within the water supply realm, there's folks a lot smarter and a lot wiser and a lot more experienced than I that have been having these conversations going back to the, you know, the anti-drift days. You know, there's, you know, that uniform methodology that we all struggle with is something that's challenging, because we know that the districts grew up based on the needs within those individual districts, be it the Everglades pieces in South Florida or the St. John's pieces, or the SWCA and the water demand, you know, the strong water demand pieces in Swift Mud. So, you know, there's a really interesting piece of that. You know, the expectations as it relates to how allocations are going to be impacted by, you know, any proposed changes prior to rule adoption is something that, you know, in the interest of clarity to stakeholders and clarity to the folks that want to make sure that these permitting processes and these regs and the plans that are being put in place are going to be protective of the resources, so we don't see the MFLs being triggered up in the St. John's region. You know, how do we, again, look at, you know, modeling and you know, for instance, we've brought up the SFRs and the regional kind of look. How do you look at these various factors to be able to say, okay, holistically, we know that at, you know, 760, we're looking at, we may trigger a, you know, trigger something up in the northern spring MFLs, you know, however, there may be something regional in the southeast portion of the, you know, of the CFWI where a demand may be able to be met without, you know, without triggering. And how do you look at that holistically, but then also within the context of the various, you know, district rules and approaches. And that's really where we're getting into some, you know, some really, really interesting thickets. And I think that there's a need to, again, put the marker in the ground that this is an issue that is going to continue to be talked about and continue to be raised. I'm sure you're going to hear other, you know, other comments as well. What I will say is, again, from the agricultural stakeholder perspective, at least coming from our office, we appreciate you working with us as a cooperative agency. We appreciate you consulting with us on these topics and the conversations that we get to have. I personally appreciate you very much, Mr. Chair, making sure that this conversation came back before this committee and we were able to have it. And we look forward to continuing to work with you to, again, protect the absolutely valuable natural resources of this area, to work with all the constituents that have interest so that we can preserve the vitality and abilities of folks to have a concrete plan moving forward so that we've got those natural resources and we can continue to live, love, and enjoy life and work within this region of the world. So I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, your staff has been great in helping work through some of the initial issues that were there from the initial drafts, and we're, you know, continuing to work and making sure that the language that is impacts agriculture is, you know, clear and doesn't create confusion and have, you know, as I've kind of said before, the, you know, unintended impacts, and that the rule is something that is consistent. And so we, you know, and we're continuing to look at that language throughout the rule as it pertains to agriculture and utilities as well, to make sure that the rule is clear. It is making sure that what requirements are in there are done in a way that is not going to create additional confusion or inconsistency. And so we are continuing to work on those, and that's kind of the main reason for having this presentation, is just to give the different stakeholders kind of an additional opportunity outside of the formal rulemaking process, to continue making those comments and letting us know where there's additional improvements could be made, so that we can be making sure we're taking everything into consideration as we put on the final revisions to the rule. So thank you for those comments. Any other comments from the committee members before we move to the public comment portion?
This is Todd Swingle. I'll just echo Chris's statements. First of all, we do, and to the chair, we certainly do appreciate the opportunity to engage on it. As is evident from our prior discussion on the plan, the rule and implementation is where a lot of the details really begin to emerge. And similar to ag, I think the utility comments and concerns are very similar. Consistency looks different in a lot of different ways. And so trying to promote consistency also needs to be able to recognize the unique character that we have in different communities, and the unique nature of withdrawals as they relate to environmental constraints as well. And so the utilities in particular have, in the two topics that were brought up, were the 2025 constraint and conservation. And there's, from a utility perspective, they're recognizing environmental constraints is understood. Supporting conservation has been a long-standing tenet of the utilities in Central Florida. So I don't think there's a lot of distance on in terms of outcomes back to the three things that were brought up of protecting natural resources, meeting the needs of the region, and diversifying our sources and opportunities. But the implementation strategies and the timing of the implementation strategies are critical, and it's absolutely critical that we're one size fits all approaches are challenging, and that's and balancing that with the a striving for consistency as well is tough. This is one of the most significant rules that's been done certainly in the time that I've been working in this region. So we do appreciate the support. How this rule gets implemented, how this rule moves forward from the water supply plan that was just adopted, is really where the critical concerns do lie. And we do hope to, and certainly intend to continue to be a collaborative member of that partnership and moving those forward across all of the stakeholders.
Thank you. Yeah, and you and several of the other utilities and groups representing various utilities have been very willing to work with us and meet with us to go over specific language and sure that there's things that we may not realize some of the impacts or just how it would be implemented. And so it has been good collaboration, and continue to do so as we put the kind of final touches on the rule, so that we can have that rule that's in a way where it is, has consistency and clarity. So thank you for those comments. Anybody else? All right. I guess, Christine, do we go to public comment now? Or I don't want to get us out of order.
Nope. Our next up, we do have a general public comment period. So I'm going to go ahead and share the public comment screen. And if you have a comment, as it should say on your screen now, if you're presenting via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. If you're participating via phone call, you're going to use *9 to raise your hand. And when it is your turn, you'll use *6 to mute and unmute yourself. First up, I have Mr. Brian Medjick. Oh, his microphone just went red. So hopefully he can, we can get him back on. In the meantime, why don't we go to Mr. Charles Shin. Uh-oh.
There we go. I think you got me now.
Okay, great.
Yeah, sorry about that, Christine. Charles Shin, Florida Farm Bureau Federation. Certainly do wanted to say I appreciate both Chris and Todd's comments. Ag water use is unique and different, and we can't lose sight of that. When there's adequate rainfall throughout the region, the lands where there is ag located are a major source of recharge, and there's actually no water use being consumed by the farmers and ranchers. During the dry periods is a different story. That's when irrigation is critical to produce a crop for which we all depend at least 3 times a day, some of us more. But anyway, I do appreciate being a part of this process. It's hard, it's difficult, it's a bit unnerving at times, trying to determine what water use is going to look like for agriculture in 2040, 2050. But let's just keep in mind that the agriculture is critical to our food security of our nation and food security around the world. And this particular area within CFWI, although it's growing considerably in urbanization, the ag in this area is quite productive, even with a setback of greening and citrus, which there is a solution right around the corner. But we need to take a look at the value of these lands for agriculture and make sure that agriculture is protected with the water that is needed to grow the crops. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Shin. Hopefully we'll be able to get you this time, Mr. Medjick.
Can you hear me?
Yes, great. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yes, this is Brian Medjick with Liquid Solutions Group here again on behalf of the Stopper Plus 2 group utilities. I didn't get a chance to mention earlier, Stopper Plus 2 consists of St. Cloud, Toho Water Authority, Orange County, Polk County, Reedy Creek Improvement District, Orlando Utilities Commission, and Seminole County. We wanted to take a minute to just briefly talk about the rule. The Stopper Plus 2 group has always been supportive of the CFWI rulemaking legislation, as it was intended to, formalize consistency in the region, and it's always been based on a collaborative process. The rule that's, has been published, the draft rule, is very complex and will have a significant impact on stakeholders, and the group has been an active part in commenting. One of the significant concerns that the group has raised, of course, is the resource allocation limits. The group's been concerned that it was largely being driven by the results of a regional planning level process that didn't fully look at all the options available to stakeholders to address their impacts. But also in the way that the resource allocation limits are being applied. The group's concerned is going to create, inequities between permittees and use types because, the blanket resource allocation limit, really isn't based directly on contribution to impact. So, some stakeholders that have, negligible impact to local and regional resources could get substantial reductions in allocation and vice versa. The group just feels it's an inefficient approach to managing resources. And that other options, are available to address the concerns of the region. In addition, we're concerned that there's some unintended consequences of the rule, that the rule doesn't recognize or protect, investments in reclaimed water, AWS, and management techniques such as substitution credits quite yet. And we know that, we're working with the department and the districts and appreciate that collaboration. But then also, we feel that supplemental and conjunctive use supplies that augment, small uses, interim uses that augment large reclaimed water and systems and AWS projects should not be restricted by the rule. As you said, we feel kind of the blanket resource allocation limits, not an efficient approach, and that more effective, equitable, and efficient benefits can be achieved through targeted strategies. Through focused modeling and identifying projects, MFL prevention and recovery strategies, and individual permit reviews. In addition to the resource allocation limits, as Todd mentioned, the utilities have had a strong concern about the water conservation goal, which is a specific per capita target for public water supply utilities over 100,000 gallons per day. We really thank the department and the districts for some of the changes that were recently made to this aspect of the rule based on stakeholder comments, and really look forward to continuing, that dialogue with the department and districts to, work on, consistency with the regional water supply plan for legislation and to develop goals that are achievable and will encourage compliance with the goals. And of course, in addition to those, two major or significant concerns, the group has had a number of other concerns and has submitted several letters to the department expressing those concerns. And again, really have appreciated the collaboration and look forward to continuing to work with the department and the district on those comments and the rule. Also, given the complex nature of the rule, though the Stopper +2 group, request consideration of the following, as the department and the districts move forward with rule development. The first is to, extend the schedule for rule development to continue the good collaboration that's been going on with stakeholders through the CFWI process. The second, and we mentioned this during the regional water supply plan presentation, is to really just expedite the MFL prevention and recovery strategies to address some of these local impacts in a targeted manner, instead of applying a blanket resource allocation limit. We really feel that those targeted approaches will also help some of the regional impacts that have been identified. 3, address any remaining impacts once that MFL prevention and recovery has been developed through individual permit reviews that consider solution strategies and all the good projects that are identified in those prevention and recovery strategies. And then the final is just to look forward to working together with the department to try to make sure the rule is consistent with the regional water supply plan where directed by legislation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and appreciate all your hard work and efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Medjic. Next up, we have Gabrielle Milch.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Gabrielle Milch, St. John's River Keeper. I'm speaking today on the burden to recreational users for the rules for the FDEP consumptive use permitting. The harm and saltwater intrusion that could occur by over pumping, and it appears that over allocation and the utilities buffering, the public deserves more, not just the irrigators in this sense and the demand. Outreach is not always inclusive of all of the recreational users. The utilities have fierce competition, the private, the small, the other water users, and the cost of the harm for fixing is who's going to pay in the future for that. I know that's a projection, but you're, looking at this consumer demand projections, and this is, while conservation has been a longstanding tenet, it's not always been allocated, or it's not always been done by all of the consumers for the utilities. So voluntary conservation is really, 50 million gallons out of 760 million gallons is a drop in the bucket. And I appreciate all of your hard work for these years over the Central Florida Water Initiative, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milch. Next up, we have Beth Lewis.
Conservancy. I just wanted to start my comments by echoing Mr. Pettit's comments about the symbiotic relationship between the plan and the regulatory process. In this case, the regulatory process is actually proposing to address some of the findings that are in the plan. And as Mr. Pettit mentioned, there's a mandate by statute that we link this regulatory process to the CFWI process. So with that said, the Nature Conservancy believes that we have opportunities to promote the use of nature-based solutions as part of the alternative water supply development that is addressed in this regulatory process. So nature-based solutions utilize the inherent ability of nature to enhance water availability, improve water quality, and reduce risks associated with climate change. We really have an opportunity here to be innovative. As was mentioned, these are some of the most complex and far-reaching rules that we've seen within the water supply realm in a while. And the Nature Conservancy has proposed rule language specifically on this issue of the use of nature-based solutions, and hope everybody on the steering committee will have the opportunity to look at that specific language. We do appreciate FDEP and the collaboration that has been continuing amongst all the stakeholders as we move forward in this process. And we do appreciate the opportunity to see the third draft of the rule before we enter the rulemaking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Next up, we have Segundo Fernandez.
Hi, can you all hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. I would like to point out in relation to Mr. Swingle's comments about the state of the rulemaking versus the state of the regional water supply plan, that Ms. Koger's first slide on rulemaking, last sentence identified resource limitations of the regional water supply plan as being the basis for the adoption of specific rules by DEP in the CFWI rulemaking process. Let me say first that I represent the city of Lakeland. Lakeland is wholly within the Southwest Florida Water Management District. SwiftMud has been a leader in resource protection and in developing water use caution areas. I had the privilege for 5 years in the 1990s of serving as special counsel to SwiftMud in the development of water use caution areas. SwiftMud has adopted the the Southern Water Use Caution Area. There has been tremendous progress in the protection of resources and the enhancement and meeting of MFL recovery strategies. We have a significant problem with the rule that has been presented in that it includes those utilities in SWCA with the additional allocation cutbacks applicable throughout the entire CFWI area. Mr. Murphy, I'm glad you're on this panel, because back in 2018, at the adoption of the 5-year report on the SWCA recovery strategy assessments, the district and the board of SwiftMud specifically said The recovery strategies regulatory component, that is the SWCA rules, has contributed to the consistent progress made to date in the SWCA. A major accomplishment of the adopted regulatory enhancements is the additional flexibility for permit applicants while ensuring the continued resource management and recovery. The board went on to say, no additional rulemaking is necessary specific to SWCA at this time, other than MFL assessments or reevaluations for water bodies on the district's MFL priority list. But very significantly, at page 36 of that report, the report states, while the SWCA rules are not changing, Polk County is within the Central Florida Water Initiative, and the southern part of the county is in the SWCA. The Florida DEP has initiated rulemaking for the Central Florida Water Initiative. FDEP is developing rules along with the district, the South Florida Water Management District, St. Johns River Water Management District, and the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. The last sentence states, the CFWI rules, when adopted, will only affect that portion of Polk County outside of the SWCA. The city of Lakeland and probably 6 or 7 other municipal utilities are within the SWCA, and yet the draft rules the department has reported to you includes the SWCA in those CFWI rules. This is contrary to the stated intent that those of us in SWCA have been operating under, getting permits, allocations granted, permits extended, and in our commitment to developing additional alternative water supplies. I think this is a significant disconnect. We have brought it up to DEP, and we wanted to bring it up to the CFWI steering committee because, as Mr. Swingle said, the limitations in the regional water supply plan are in fact the basis for the rules that are being proposed. And the inclusion of SWCA utilities in these CFWI rules is contrary to statements that have been previously made and contrary to the specific provisions in the CFWI statute of 373.0465. Thank you. We appreciate everybody's attention. We appreciate the ability that we've had to continue to communicate with the agencies. And we hope that some resolution of this issue will be found before rules are proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Next up, we have Ms. Lisa Runneman.
Good morning, Lisa Reineman, St. Johns Riverkeeper. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We have several concerns that we've submitted in writing on both the rule as well as the water supply plan. For today's conversation, I want to focus on the water quality concerns, and both the plan and the rules focus on unsustainable, expensive alternative water supply instead of focusing on sustainable water conservation. Our concern has been consistent with the fact that the plan and the rule rely on the water supply impact study that focused on water withdrawals in the St. Johns. When I addressed those in writing, the comment from the CFWI team back was, well, this has been peer reviewed. The water supply impact statement confirms that this is available water. However, if you truly look at the peer review, I'm going to ask all committee members to do so. The National Resource Council had 2 pages of concerns that have not been addressed. And just to sum it up, they basically concluded in that report that the impacts to the St. Johns River would be offset with sea level rise and runoff from future development. And unfortunately, that's just looking at it from a water quantity perspective. It's not addressing the water quality impacts of saltwater intrusion from sea level rise or additional pollution from the runoff. And so the water supply impact statement is incomplete and needs to be addressed from a water quality perspective because it's not sufficient in determining or giving a green light for water withdrawals from the St. Johns. So my questions would be is what is the status of the water supply impact study update regarding water quality? How will CFWI and DEP address water quality impacts resulting from the offset of fresh water flows with increasing runoff from land use changes and saltwater intrusion? How will surface water withdrawal permits protect the St. Johns from back-to-back extreme events like 2 to 3 year extreme droughts in a row, which was also identified in the peer review report? And how does DEP and CFWI address cumulative impacts from water withdrawals, water quality and fisheries? It's too important to not address these issues prior to these permits and the plan and rule going forward. It's hard to undo this when it's already done, the harm. And since you're just now starting to look at sea level rise and climate changes, it's of critical importance to weigh in saltwater intrusion and water quality to this discussion. I'll follow up with these comments in writing, but thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Runneman. Next up, we have Mr. Billy Kemper.
Yes, I want to thank you very much for allowing us to participate. We have not seen the latest draft of the rules since our last meeting. I think, everything that Ag has asked for has been, we can live with the exception of the concerns we have here in the eastern part of Osceola County, and also the producers in Brevard and Indian River County that are using artesian water is a salinity issue. I want to know, I would like to know what the district has ever decided on that, because if the salinity increases with us like it has in central Brevard, then we will no longer be able to use this water for irrigation. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kemper. Chair, I believe that is all the public comments that we have. So our next and last agenda item is steering committee comment. I will turn it over to you, Chair, to facilitate any final comments.
Yeah, thank you. And just want to say thank you again to you and all the others that helped put this meeting together virtually. We'll see when we have our next one, whether it's still virtually or get to see everyone in person again. But again, the feedback and the comments and discussion on the plan and the rule was all, I thought very well done and instructive, and just appreciate the other steering committee members. But that's all the comments I have. Happy to open it up to the other steering committee members.
Just Todd Swingle, just I guess a quick question. One, I do appreciate the discussion. As we've heard, I think these decisions and everything that we have going on, they are significant, and they do affect stakeholder groups of all types. But in the end, we're all Central Floridians, so I appreciate the overall what I think is good alignment toward the overarching themes of where we want to ultimately end up. You just mentioned our next meeting, so I don't know, that would be a question, is if we do have another plan for a meeting and how and timing of that, and specifically related to the conversation that went on here, and especially given the outcome of our transmittal of the plan, is our process for formalizing the minutes on this meeting.
Yeah, Christine.
Yep.
As far as the minutes, and we don't have a set time to meet again, but maybe you can provide kind of the process for that.
Yeah, typically we would send the meeting minutes a little bit later, but knowing that that's kind of something that you guys are looking to kind of finalize, what I can do is put them together. Give me a couple days to put those together, and I will reach out to you all for to make sure I've accurately captured what you guys have indicated during this meeting. and we can work on finalizing a final draft. Of course, that would be approved at the next steering committee meeting itself, but certainly we can work together on a draft. I'm more than happy to do that. As a next follow-up, I just wanted to reiterate that the next step would be within the next 2 weeks. I can't believe it's almost November, but within the next 2 weeks, this item will be on the agendas for the respective governing boards for the water management districts.
Very good, thank you. I'll just kind of go through, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it, and forgive my verbosity as usual. I wanted to, again, personally thank you for making sure that we got this on the agenda. We're able to have the conversation and bring the regulatory plan back. Just wanted to make sure that that appreciation was very strongly on the record. At the risk of being melodramatic, I just wanted to take another couple minutes just to say, hey, this has been a long time process. This is a vital area of the state, a vital economic engine, some amazingly beautiful and vital natural resources that we are behooved to make sure that we are protecting. And, due to the economic foundation of the state, we continue to see increased development pressure that impacts not only water supplies, but also agriculture and the natural resources in this area. You have, based on the economy that we see right now, and for better or for worse, you've got significant income inequality issues and affordability issues within the utility realm that, again, given some of the other hats I've worn, I think we're all too well aware of in this group. And we want to continue to have folks be able to again, live, work, and enjoy life. You've got agricultural folks that are working very, very hard to feed the state and the world. They're looking to continue to be viable and continue to act in a sustainable fashion. And we work very, very hard on our irrigation management, best management practices to make sure that folks are utilizing water as efficiently as possible, and continue to pledge as an office to do that. You have the natural resources that are the drivers of this state. It's why people want to come here. It's why people want, on a 95-degree day with a gabillion% humidity, if that's a number, to go soak in those 72-degree, crystal clear springs and do that. All that is to continue to stress the absolute gravity of getting this right, continuing our progress, and continuing to make sure that we do continue to lock elbows and move forward without leaving anybody behind in this process. It's a privilege to be able to interact with everybody on this committee and everybody, all the stakeholders that we have the opportunity to interact with, and just appreciate the continued conversation. And this is one area where I think, as long as we're maintaining progress, over communication is not exactly a bad thing. So appreciate it, and thank you to you, Mr. Chair, and my fellow committee members.
Thank you, Chris. Susan?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for their presentations and for the effort put into this meeting, and I have otherwise no comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
A well-run meeting, and as Susan said, the presentations were first class, and so were the conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, just say I appreciate the comments and the stakeholders' engagement on this process, and just want to thank all of the staff for their work on the rule development and putting this meeting together. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise to the staff of all the districts and stakeholders and DEP staff who worked on the regional water supply plan over the last several years, and getting the update put together, and look forward to continuing to work with all of you as we move forward with the draft rule as well. So without, I'll turn it back over to Christine.
Chair, that is all of our agenda items, so I'll turn it over to you to get motions for adjournment.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Chris Pettit.
Second.
Second, Todd Swingle.
Very good. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Opposed? All right. Very good. We are adjourned. Thank you all, committee members, and look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.